Deputy Jovan Hardwick. And the second incident involves the termination of Lieutenant Jason Franjesevic, Sergeant Carrie Lynn Colosimo, Corporal Emmanuel Nomikos, and Deputy Catherine Cantrell. As to the first incident, that occurred on August 11th of 2025, and Deputy Hardwick was assigned to the healthcare division at the Pinellas County Jail. He was assigned to an area that houses inmates with mental health issues, and these inmates are in single cells because of their various psychiatric oversight statuses. The single cells that house the inmates have solid steel doors, and the inmates remain in the cells except for necessary outside cell activity. The inmates eat in their cells, and the food trays are passed to the inmates through a food trap in the door. Deputy Hardwick was supervising inmate workers at the jail who are serving these dinner trays to the inmates. One of the inmates, who I'm not going to name because of his mental health status and because his identity is irrelevant to this case. That inmate completed his meal service. Deputy Hardwick directed the inmate to remove his arms from the open food trap door so that it could be closed. So these are steel doors. There's a food trap in the middle. They open and close so things can be passed through them. The inmate, again, refused and kept his arms extended, and he kept the door from closing. When Deputy Hardwick came to work that day, he carried a backpack with him, and he had several personal items in that backpack, including a can of Lysol disinfectant spray. After the inmate refused to move his arms from the open food trap, Deputy Hardwick retrieved his Lysol can from the officer station, returned to the inmate's cell, and sprayed the Lysol can into the open food trap. The inmate was kneeling with his arms extended and his face positioned near the opening, and Deputy Hardwick sprayed the inmate, who was on psychiatric observation status, in the face with Lysol. Inmate workers witnessed the incident, and that incident was captured on video. When the inmate still refused to comply after Hardwick sprayed him with the Lysol, Deputy Hardwick then struck the top of the inmate's hands twice with a can of Lysol. So he's got his hands in the food trap after being sprayed in the face with Lysol, and Hardwick just slams the can down on top of the inmate's hands. Deputy Hardwick then directed another deputy to open the cell door, and as that door opened, the inmate, who was then agitated, came at Deputy Hardwick and tried to push past him. Deputy Hardwick used force, placed the inmate on the ground. Additional deputies and supervisors arrived and helped to restrain the inmate. After the inmate was restrained and the incident was settled, Deputy Hardwick lied to responding supervisors by telling them that he had dumped water from a water bottle on the inmate, and he intentionally concealed the fact that he sprayed the inmate with Lysol. Deputy Hardwick wrote a report. He lied in that report and submitted false documents concerning the incident. Supervisors reviewed the report, and they immediately identified inconsistencies with Deputy Hardwick's actions and what he wrote in the report. In the report, he said that he poured water from a bottle on the inmate, when it was actually Lysol. He said that the inmate grabbed his water bottle and pinned his hand, which is a lie. Hardwick attached a photo labeled water bottle to his report. The image actually showed the bottom of a Lysol can. When supervisors spoke to Hardwick, he had a couple of meetings with them, and he repeatedly claimed falsely that he used this water bottle. When asked to produce the bottle, Hardwick said he discarded it in the trash at the jail, when in fact he put the Lysol can in his backpack and he took it home. He sent a supervisor an internet photo of a water bottle, falsely claiming that it matched the water bottle he used. So he just made up and fabricated this whole cover-up for spraying this inmate in the face with Lysol. Finally, in the Administrative Review Board hearing, which is the hearing during the internal affairs process, is that Hardwick did admit that he sprayed the Lysol in the inmate's face and that he had lied to cover it up. Fortunately, other than experiencing eye irritation from the Lysol, the inmate was not injured as a result of Deputy Hardwick's actions. And yesterday, on October 28, 2025, Deputy Hardwick was terminated from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. So before I move on to the next case, which there's a lot more to it, it involves 4 deputies. Does anybody have any questions on that one?
Are there any criminal charges for falsifying the report?
No, we've looked at criminal charges in this case, and for a whole lot of reasons, we're not going to pursue any criminal charges. There's some considerations with it and some barriers to that, but we've decided not to pursue criminal charges. Yeah. All right.
First time there's been a report against him?
What's that?
Was this the first time there's been a report against him, like a disciplinary action being faced?
It's the first time regarding Deputy Hardwick. Yeah, as far as I know, he has no disciplinary history. He's been with us since 2006. He did his job. He worked, but obviously here, he did some pretty bad stuff. So, okay. All right. If you have other questions on it at the end, you can ask them. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the next incident. This next incident happened, and again, these are unrelated incidents. It just happened that they went through the process at the same time. The next incident happened on May 15th of 2025. And this internal affairs investigation began after we received a complaint from a former inmate at the Pinellas County Jail who alleged that when she was in custody, a supervisor and several deputies entered her cell, showed her a printed photograph of her buttocks. The woman expressed concern that the image had been or would be, quote, passed around to the jail, posted on social media, and texted to other guards, close quote. There's a lot of irony to that, because how little did she know that her concerns had already happened due to the extreme misconduct of 4 Pinellas County Sheriff's Office deputies. Given the nature of what happened here and the embarrassment to this woman, I'm not going to name her, as her identity, again, just as in the other case, is irrelevant to the deputy's misconduct in this case. However, if you all want to know her identity, you can do a public records request, and the Public Information Office can provide you with her identity. Here's what happened. As I mentioned at the beginning of this case, involves Lieutenant Jason Franjesevic, who has been with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office for 25 years. Sergeant Carrie Lynn Colosimo, who is a 20-year employee. Corporal Emmanuel Nomikos, a 23-year employee. And Deputy Catherine Cantrell, who's been a deputy for 7 years. To set the context for this, Lieutenant Franjesevic was the shift commander and the highest ranking person on duty. Sergeant Colosimo was the sergeant supervising the booking area. Corporal Nomikos and Deputy Cantrell were assigned to process inmates as they were booked into the Pinellas County Jail. At about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on May 15th, patrol deputies from the Sheriff's Office arrested the female for disorderly intoxication at a bar in Seminole, and she was transported to the county jail. She arrived at the jail at about 4:30 p.m. The jail's booking area was full, and they were backed up processing new inmates upon the woman's arrival at the jail. So jail personnel told the prisoner transport officer to keep the woman in his van in the Sally Port until they had capacity to process her and complete her booking into the jail. At about 7:40 p.m., more than 3 hours after the woman arrived at the jail and had been held in the van in the Sally Port, her pants came off. The transport officer notified jail staff, and Deputy Cantrell, Sergeant Colosimo, and another female deputy went to the van, dressed the woman in jail uniform pants, and escorted her into the booking area. Lieutenant Franjesevic was present and observed the woman during the intake process. And deputies, contrary to the video evidence, determined during the initial booking process that the woman was uncooperative. The deputies claimed that the woman refused to look at the facial recognition camera, she intimidated staff by staring at them, and that she refused to answer any questions. The video evidence shows that the woman's behavior reflected intoxication and not defiance. I've watched the video. The woman was not uncooperative. She was intoxicated, and some of her reactions were slowed because of it, but their claim that she was uncooperative is just false. And again, the video showed that the woman was glancing at the camera, that she was delayed in her responses, but she was not refusing to answer questions. Deputy Cantrell, Sergeant Colosimo, Lieutenant Franjesevic, and others then moved the woman, handcuffed and shackled, to a nearby holding cell. And she was handcuffed behind her back because she was deemed erroneously to be uncooperative. The cell the deputies placed the woman in did not have a toilet, despite the fact that the woman had been held in the van for 3 hours upon arriving at the jail. The woman was in the cell alone, and there was a video camera in the cell to monitor inmates. Computers at the booking desk are used to monitor these cameras, and the cameras do record in the cells. At about 7:55 p.m., as seen on the video system, the woman walked to the floor drain in the middle of the cell. She pulled her pants down, squatted, and began to urinate into the drain. Over the next 40 minutes, the woman squatted over the drain to urinate several times before then sitting on the bench, leaning forward, exposing her buttocks and her genitals. Upon a review of the video, the investigation determined that the inmate urinated in the drain because she was placed in the cell without a toilet after spending 3 hours in the Sally Port, and that when she exposed her buttocks and genitals, she was doing so because she was trying to pull her pants up while handcuffed behind her back. Despite the fact that the woman was forced to urinate in the drain hole in the middle of the cell and was trying to pull her pants up, at about 8:45 p.m., Corporal Nomikos looked at the monitor, the video monitor of the camera that was in the woman's cell, and observed her leaning forward on the bench with her lower body elevated, exposing her buttocks and genital area. Now, all that is a really, really nice way of saying that she was on the bench and her butt was in the air and she was showing everything. Because she was trying to pull her pants up. Not because she's doing anything else. Deputy Cantrell, who was present with Corporal Nomikos, and Deputy Cantrell then used her personal cell phone to photograph the woman exposing her naked buttocks and genitals off of the video monitor. Corporal Nomikos then made derogatory comments about the woman and her anatomy. What Corporal Nomikos said is very disrespectful and degrading, and I'm not going to repeat it here. If you want to know exactly what he said, it's available in the charge sheets, and the Public Information Office can provide you with those charge sheets today. Deputy Cantrell showed the photograph of the woman's buttocks and genitals to Sergeant Colosimo, and they both laughed, making fun of the woman. As a sergeant, Colosimo saw this, and she laughed about it with her subordinate. Deputy Cantrell then sent the image of the woman in this compromised position, showing her buttocks and her genitals, to Sergeant Colosimo and another deputy through a Facebook group chat. Deputy Cantrell also texted the photo of the woman to her spouse, who is not an agency employee. Sergeant Colosimo showed Corporal Nomikos her cell phone displaying a photograph of the inmate with her buttocks and genitals exposed, and he also began to laugh about this. So Corporal Nomikos then retrieved the stored video of the woman in the compromised position, showing her buttocks and genitals, and he freeze-framed that on a different computer monitor, a larger monitor on the booking desk, in an area that could be easily seen by deputies, inmates, and anybody else passing by. Corporal Nomikos stepped aside so Sergeant Colosimo could view it, and she laughed and said, "Look at his face," referring to a deputy in the control room who could see the video monitor. So Sergeant Colosimo, the supervisor running this show, was amused by the male deputy's embarrassment upon seeing the image displayed on the computer screen. So you got this male deputy who sees this poor woman who's in reality is just trying to pull her pants up after forced to use the bathroom on the floor, and they put it up on the computer screen, and this guy sees it and is embarrassed, and Colosimo thinks that's funny. Corporal Nomikos also directed another deputy, who was not assigned to the area, to view the image of the female inmate's naked buttocks and genitals on a computer screen. Corporal Nomikos used the woman's compromised position for his own amusement. Nomikos then wrote a report about the incident that was vague and contained inaccurate statements. Deputy Cantrell viewed the image with Sergeant Colosimo, and they made derogatory remarks. So this is two female deputies, a supervisor and a deputy. They viewed the image and they made derogatory remarks about the woman's female anatomy and what they were seeing with her genitals. What they said is so disrespectful and degrading that, again, I'm not going to repeat it here. If you want to know exactly what they said, again, it's in the charge sheets. You can ask PIO for it, and they'll give you those charge sheets, but I'm not going to repeat what they said. When another deputy viewed the image of the woman, Deputy Cantrell offered to also send that deputy a copy of the photo. Remember, she had already posted it on Facebook group chat, and she had already sent it to her spouse. The image remained on that computer monitor that Corporal Nomikos set up in full view, freeze-framed on the computer for anyone to see, while inmates and staff moved through the area for an extended period of time, well over an hour. Later, Lieutenant Franjesevic came back to the booking area, and Deputy Cantrell showed him the photograph of the woman in the compromised position on her cell phone, while the same image remained displayed on the computer screen. So the lieutenant comes back, the image is up on the computer screen, and Cantrell shows it to him on her phone as well. In response to Deputy Cantrell showing him the photograph of the woman's buttocks and genitals, Lieutenant Franjesevic, the highest ranking person on duty in that division at the time, responded, "Oh God," and he turned away, taking absolutely no action regarding Deputy Cantrell's misconduct. At the same time, Lieutenant Franjesevic saw the freeze frame image of the woman's genitals and buttocks on the computer screen set up by Corporal Nomikos, and in referring to the woman's genitals, Lieutenant Franjesevic stated, "Hey, there's something been in there before," and then he laughed with his subordinates. Not only did Lieutenant Franjesevic fail to act on his subordinates' misconduct, he participated in the misconduct. He also left the image on the computer screen, allowing the image of the woman's buttocks and genitals to remain in full view for everyone to see. Lieutenant Franjesevic formed an inaccurate opinion about the incident solely from the video images rather than learning what really happened. As a result, he erroneously assumed that the inmate had intentionally, quote, mooned staff through the surveillance camera instead of learning what actually happened, which was that the woman had to urinate in a floor drain because she was placed in a cell without a toilet after having been left in a van for 3 hours, and she was simply trying to pull her pants up because she's handcuffed behind her back and she couldn't get them up. And again, go back to why was she handcuffed behind her back and in the cell? Because they deemed her uncooperative when she wasn't uncooperative. So they created this whole mess. Lieutenant Franjesevic directed Deputy Cantrell to print the photograph of the woman. After receiving the photograph, he showed it to several other subordinates. So now the lieutenant is showing the photograph around. There was absolutely no proper purpose in showing the photograph of the woman's buttocks and genitals to his subordinates, and he made fun of the woman in this compromised position. So then, Lieutenant Franjesevic, Sergeant Colosimo, and Deputy Cantrell entered the woman's cell. Lieutenant Franjesevic showed her the printed photograph of her buttocks and genitals. He admonished the woman for, quote, flashing the camera, and the woman explained that she wasn't flashing the camera, that she was attempting to pull her pants up after urinating. Lieutenant Franjesevic totally dismissed the inmate's explanation, which was truthful and accurate. Had he taken the time to properly investigate the incident, he would have learned that. The woman became upset, and the deputies deemed her further uncooperative and abated the booking process altogether and sent her to a cell upstairs. Just to give you an idea as to what some of the responses were from some of these deputies during the investigation, Deputy Cantrell described taking the photograph as a, quote, moment of stupidity. Yeah, no kidding. And admitted that she found it humorous at the time. So really humorous that a woman had to urinate in a drain hole, struggled to get her pants up, causing her to expose her buttocks and her genitals because they wrongly deemed her uncooperative, and placed her in handcuffs and shackled in a cell with no bathroom, after she was forced to sit in a van for 3 hours with no bathroom available. And Deputy Cantrell said that she found the situation humorous. During interviews as part of the investigation, Corporal Nomikos made several denials about what he saw and what he did in relation to this event. He denied seeing Deputy Cantrell use her cell phone to photograph the image on the computer, despite direct video evidence to the contrary. Nomikos claimed that he did not observe this misconduct by Deputy Cantrell in taking the photograph was false, based on his own statements that are captured by the video as well. All 4 of these deputies were fired earlier today. So all of this speaks for itself. It's horrible. They created this from the beginning by leaving her in the van, by erroneously deeming her uncooperative, by handcuffing her behind her back, by shackling her, by putting her in a cell, by making these assumptions. And it's reprehensible conduct across the board. So all 5 of these people, by what they did and what they chose to do, have forfeited their right to serve and to be deputy sheriffs and to work for the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. So, anybody got any questions?
How does it make you feel knowing that these aren't people that were just hired? Most of them are been here for over 15 years.
Yeah, disgusted, let down. You know, it's awful that people would treat other human beings like this. You know, I mean, think about both of these people were in vulnerable positions. We have a #1 responsibility to treat people fairly, to treat them with respect, treat them with dignity, regardless of what they've done. The one guy has mental health issues. He was on psychiatric observations in the Hardwick case. He's not all there. He had his food trap door open. He was trying to talk to some other people, and he gets sprayed in the face with Lysol. Then you got a woman who, whatever, she had a few drinks too many.